Hello there. I'm Ricky Church with Flickering Myth. I have here with me today Tim Sheridan, writer of Batman The Long Halloween, Part 1 and 2. He has also written for Superman Man of Tomorrow, the upcoming Masters of the Universe Revelation anime series, and Transformers War for Cybertron, Earthrise, and Kingdom, as well as several DC comics. So, Tim, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Ricky. Thanks for having me.
Right. Cool stuff. All right. So, Batman Long Halloween Part 1, it's been out for a couple weeks now. What's been your reaction to the reception that's gone from fans so far? And just after all the work over the last couple of years you guys did on it, what's that been like for you now that's out there?
I think unbelievable relief. Look, I'm not even kidding. You know, it's hard for me to sort of look at the stuff that I've worked on and look at the finished product and really be able to see what it is that everyone else sees. It's a, I see all the blueprints and I see all the notes and just the process when I watch it. So it's hard for me to get a real read on anything. And so that's why, it's wonderful when it gets out there in the world and then I get to see sort of what the reaction is. Then I get sort of an idea of, oh, okay, well then this works for people or it doesn't work for people. And more than anything I've worked on in a long time, I was dreading the reaction to Long Halloween Part 1 because it's so beloved. And the book, and it's so classic. And I went in with the intent of making something that would celebrate the book, knowing that it's a movie. It's never going to be the exact same thing. I just hoped that we could sort of that we could all live side by side, and it would help people, and it would enhance the enjoyment of the book, and maybe the book would enhance enjoyment of the movie. And it seems like, on balance, that seems to be the way it's been greeted. The reaction's been sort of overwhelmingly positive, as far as I'm concerned, for something that was very much could have been a trap. Like there's no way you could possibly do justice to some things. And I'm not saying we did or we have. I'm just saying that I think we made the movie that we set out to make, and I think people are responding to it in all the best ways, and that fills me with absolute relief.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. Like you were saying about hoping that the adaptation and the graphic novel can live side by side. I thought Part 1 was very faithful to the comic, but you still made changes where necessary. Can you talk about how you decided on those changes, and just what you felt was appropriate and what you felt like had to stay in?
A lot of it is you can't just it's not a motion comic. You can't just film the comic. It's a movie. It's a different medium. And so that there's stuff that needs to sort of get truncated and in some cases even sort of moved around a little bit in order for the beats to work the way they need to in a film. So it can be tough when you're a fan of the source material, like I am, to sort of divorce yourself from the idea of, well, I want it to be exactly the same thing as the book. I just feel like there's no reason to do it exactly the same. The book exists. Like, go read the book. The book is wonderful. It's never the intention to replace the book. It was like, oh, well, these jerks come along and we're going to make a better version of the thing. No, that's not what we're doing. It's sort of let's realize it in another way. I hope that someday somebody makes a serialized TV version of it. That, you know, like that would be a great way to do the Long Halloween. I wish that had been
Yeah, yeah.
sort of a way that we could do it. It wasn't really what we set out to do, but it would be really fun to see it like that. So you go in knowing that there's stuff you're just going to have to trim or truncate, and then there's other things that may be themes in the story in the book that help tell the story in a cinematic way that you sort of elevate and maybe beef up a little bit. I think we did that quite a bit. I think you know, in a comic book, I've talked about this before a lot of time. You know, in a comic book, you're sort of reading between the lines. You're filling in a lot of stuff in between panels and pages and books, and sometimes some of that stuff is good connective tissue for a movie in terms of pacing, in terms of how you dole out
Yeah, right.
story beats. And so that was, in a lot of ways, it was very analytical, you know, the process of writing it. It was like, okay, these are the pieces these are all the little bricks and, you know, Lego bricks that I get to play with, and how do I build them in a way that we're still the Long Halloween, but it's not exactly the book, because it's, first of all, that's impossible, and second of all, we talked, Butch Lukic and Jim Krieg and I talked in the very beginning, you know, we didn't want to upend what people know and love about the story at all, but we did want to give longtime fans who feel that they know the way the Long Halloween works, the machine of the Long Halloween, we did want to provide them with a little bit of a surprise, you know, give you something, another way to sort of see it. Because as I always say, we're over here in our little corner of the multiverse. The book is over in its corner of the multiverse, and maybe it plays out slightly differently in ours, but if we've done our job right, in the end, it is still the experience of the Long Halloween. You still feel something of the way you felt when you first read the book. That's what we went in trying to do.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, like you were saying, of kind of expanding on themes. One thing that I really like that part one did was, and we talked about like a couple weeks ago too, of how you guys emphasized this was like the beginning of Batman as a detective, that he like was not fully formed as like the world's greatest detective yet. This is like his first big mystery, and he even says like, I wasn't expecting it to be like this. I really like that aspect of the story.
Thank you. We leaned into that right away, and I think that that's something that is in the book. Look, I mean, it's subtle in the book. I mean, the fact is, it's a mystery that, by all accounts, you know, it takes 13 issues, course of a year, for Batman to get to the bottom of it. And I think arguably he's got a lot of help in the book.
Yeah.
And he doesn't, you know, it's arguable about how successful he is in terms of solving the mystery. I think that's up to interpretation. But, you know, we felt, we took that and we said, well, obviously, you know, it's essentially, it's a sequel to year 2, essentially. Or, I'm sorry, to year 1. So it's year 2, essentially. And so maybe the idea is he's still figuring out, he's still learning on the job how to be a detective. And that's something we don't really see explored much. And so we thought there was material there. Look, you want your protagonist and your Batman character not to be monolithic. There are stories in which he is, and those can be great. But when he's young and starting out, and it's a mystery that's really difficult for him to solve, the idea of having a growth for your protagonist is important. And for him to see him start off not expecting that he's going to have to be a detective, and then sort of learn on the job the hard way that he has to do that. We thought there was a lot of opportunity there, so we leaned into that. But you know, there's I see the occasional reaction sometimes. Somebody will tag me in something and they're like, you know, this doesn't make any sense. Batman is the world's greatest detective, you know. and I'm like, well, yes, later, sure. And you know, but what if?
Yeah, like people expect him to be like fully Batman right away. Right.
Yeah, and you know what? There's an argument for that. I get that, but also some of it is based on people say, you know, well, his whole reason for becoming Batman is is the unsolved murderers of his parents. And that's, it seems like it's a detective story from the very beginning. Totally accurate, like absolutely a great read on Batman. If you see our movies in the Long Halloween, and this is in the book as well, but I think we do a little bit more to emphasize this point even more. We handle the deaths of the Waynes slightly differently. We come at it from a different angle that wouldn't necessarily lead you to think that, well, he's going to become a detective now. It's I can't say too much about that because I don't want to spoil anything for part two, but Mother's Day and Father's Day are coming up. So
for sure. And a moment ago, you mentioned your work with Butch and Jim. And what's interesting, I spoke to Butch the other week or 2 weeks ago for part one as well. But like he mentioned that you guys had actually gone shelved for a while because you were told that Matt Reeves, the Batman, was adapting Long Halloween, and then it's like that wasn't the case. So that must be like a bit of a whiplash of moods for you, right? Like to first be writing Long Halloween and then told, oh, you can't do it anymore, and then okay, now you can do it.
It was rough. First of all, like my work on part 1 and 2 was completed by the time this happened. So it was in production and I was starting work. I think I had already begun work on Superman Man of Tomorrow, which was to be the third movie in Butch's new cycle of movies.
Yeah.
And then we got word that they were sort of shutting down production on Long Halloween. And as Butch said, because of things that were pending with the Matt Reeves movie. And I honestly, I thought, well, that's it. These movies are never going to get finished and they're never going to see the light of day. And that it made me, it made me sad because we worked really hard on the scripts and not just the script. I mean, like Butch and I worked hard on the script together, and then a lot of great talented people came in. I mean, by that point, backgrounds are done and designs are, character designs are probably done. We've recorded actors and there's a lot of stuff that's happened. A lot of great people have worked on it by that point. So I was worried. I thought, oh man, maybe it'll never happen. And it also had the effect of moving Man of Tomorrow into sort of first position, a movie that wasn't at that point ready to be in first position production. So we moved faster on that than we might have done. Although I have to say, I think that perhaps my work was almost completed on Man of Tomorrow when Long Halloween was stopped production. I don't remember the timeline because as the writer, I do my job and then I hand off the script and then then the actors are recorded and while backgrounds are being done and designs are happening and I usually don't see the product until you do. But I was in close contact with Chris Palmer and Butch Lukic and they were kept telling me what was going on. So I'm very, very glad that the movies have come out. Long Halloween 1 was supposed to come out for San Diego Comic-Con last year. But we ended up releasing Man of Tomorrow last summer and happily we got to go ahead. I was as surprised as anyone. Actually, people don't know this. This is a first, an exclusive for you. I was blindsided and shocked while recording the Man of Tomorrow panel for DC Fandom last year with Darren Criss and Butch and Matt Bomer, who's hosting the panel. At the end of it, while we're recording, says, okay, and now here's the new slate of movies for next year. And he says The Long Halloween. I had no idea that we had gotten clearance to go forward.
Oh, so at that point you thought you were still canceled.
I thought it wasn't ever going to happen. And then
wow.
If you watch closely in the video, you see sort of me like trying to play it cool, but like, when he says
nice.
it, very
happy. Oh, that's awesome. Now you also kind of spoke about like you know, kind of not spoiling anything for part two, which is coming out like fairly shortly as well later this month. You ended part one on like a pretty interesting cliffhanger, and I think like actually I had a pretty good point in the graphic novel where things like shift after that point in the story. So how did you decide to end on New Year's and uh, the potential change in the outcome of, not to get into the details of the graphic novel, but the potential change of the outcome for how that might shape part two?
Well, there's a few different sort of pieces to that puzzle. First of all, it was a little nerve wracking because it does feel like like part one covers doesn't cover a lot of ground in terms of the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
It's really only a couple of months out
Yeah.
of a year, but there's a lot of story in
Mm-hmm.
those first couple of months, that and a lot of setup that leads you into the sort of runaway train that is part two.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's without spoiling anything, we we felt like New Year's, there was an opportunity to do something that would be maybe a little bit of a surprise twist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's interesting how I've seen people react to it. Some people, most people seem to get the twist that we put in there from the book.
Mm-hmm.
Some people who know the book haven't quite figured out that it was a twist
Mm-hmm.
yet. And and so we'll see how part two plays out for them.
Yeah.
Um, one of the things, and I'm not saying this is related at all to this part of the conversation, but one of the things we talked about in the very beginning of the process was we talked to some fans of the book, people who were sort of legit, really love the book fans. I did,
Yeah.
and I asked very simply, you know, who, what's the solution to the mystery? Since you know the book, like
Yeah.
who's holiday? How does it work out? You know how
Yeah.
many answers I got? How many different answers I got? It's amazing how, and I think that's just, because it's a great work of art. I think there are things that are really up for interpretation in the book,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a lot of different ways to look at it. And so it's difficult when you're making the movie. It's sort of like, well, how, can we do that? Can we leave it in a way that people can fill in the blanks, or do we want to sort of come at it from a different angle and
Mm-hmm.
maybe include some surprises, and how do we do that and ultimately still stay faithful and be the long Halloween?
Mm-hmm.
So those were like the challenges that factored in, but those questions, since those happened early on, they led us to the New Year's being sort of the hinge on the
Yeah.
story.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at it, and I see a lot of people also talk about. I see a lot of people talk about, well, why did they split this into two movies? Why did they chop it in half? It's a money grab, or some kind of thing like that. I'm here to tell you, like, I'm not saying that kind of stuff doesn't happen in Hollywood. Sure, it
Yeah.
does. That's not what happened here. It's really, really not. The writer, was told to make one movie, and the first
Mm-hmm.
day I sat down to try to write, to try to break out the story as one movie, I said, I can't do the long Halloween in 85 minutes or 70. At the
Yeah.
time, we were 72 minutes. I can't do 72-minute long Halloween. It's
Yeah.
not going to work. When I looked at it, I'm like, well, that means that this important plot point is going to have to happen in Act One. And
Yeah.
that's like, how is that going to, how do we, and we're supposed to go from month to month to month. We're going to be cutting to another month every 2 minutes. It's
Yeah.
jumping ahead in time every 2 minutes in the movie. It's going to be jarring. The effect
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
really important.
For sure.
So it just made no sense to me. So it was a purely creative decision. People say, well, why couldn't it just be one movie? It was going to be. And if it had been, it would have been 72 or 85-minute movie
Mhm.
of Long Halloween, which let me tell you, you would not have enjoyed.
Yeah.
That would not be satisfying. So it had to be
Yeah.
two movies. Because it's two movies, it's two completely different productions with two
Mhm.
completely different budgets. And,
Mhm.
so it costs twice as much to make at least to make the Long Halloween as a movie,
Yeah.
which is why there are two different, Blu-rays
Yeah. Yeah.
to pick up.
Well, like to your point there of how it's like two different movies and productions, like one of the big differences of that part two is going to have compared to part one is your use of pretty much all of Batman's rogue gallery. Like almost every villain shows up in throughout the Long Halloween. What was that like for you to be like, okay, I get to write the Joker, Catwoman, Scarecrow, Mad Hatter, like all these guys.
I mean, just getting to write the Joker in part one was, it's the time of my life.
Yeah.
I had done a little work writing on Justice League Action back in the day, where Mark Hamill voiced Joker, and I thought, oh well,
Yeah.
this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Is Mark Hamill is doing my Joker lines, and he's
Yeah.
hysterically funny and
That's
creepy and
cool.
great. Well, Long Halloween is a very different sort of thing. One of the
Mhm.
great comments I've seen from a lot of folks is, boy, Joker's really funny in Long Halloween. He's terrifying, but he's funny. And that means a lot to me, because I do think that that's one of the things that you want from Joker. He's the Joker. Even he's sort of, in this movie, he's Bugs Bunny. He's a cartoon in the middle of what is really a live action movie that
Yeah.
happens to be animated.
That's actually a great way to describe him. Yeah.
I mean, that's how it is. And he's bouncing around like he's pretty wild. And
Hmm.
and then, like, so writing him, I have a I was shocked at how easily his voice came out of my head. Uh,
Hmm.
but then Troy Baker, um,
Yeah.
you know, I think Troy Baker is someone who is poised to sort of inherit that
Yeah.
mantle of this is
Yeah.
the
Ever
Joker.
since I played Arkham Origins, that was the first time I heard Troy Baker as Joker, and ever since then I've been like, okay, there's a worthy successor to Mark Hamill now.
Right. I mean, look, and Troy will be the first to tell you, I think, that Mark is this, pinnacle
Yeah.
of Jokerdom. Um, and I think, I see people say things like, oh, well, he's doing a Mark impression. I,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think you need to pay closer attention.
Yeah.
Troy is an accomplished, hugely talented actor.
Hmm.
And what he does with his work and his performance as Joker is unsettling and at the same time funny. And that takes to play all those layers in one line,
Hmm.
and then also to have this musical voice that
Hmm.
is at once cartoonish and yet completely believable and terrifying is an accomplishment. And it is the reason why I say he's a guy who's gonna keep, hopefully, if we're lucky, keep playing Joker for years to come. And he's another guy, by the way, who could do it in live action, like everybody in our cast.
Hmm.
This cast, like I said, I mean, I approached this as, I'm going to write a live action Batman movie, and it will just happen to be animated.
Yeah.
um, so that meant there were some decisions that got made, and I'll talk about those in a second. But it also happened to be that the cast that was trotted out for this event is a cast that you could absolutely
Mhm.
see playing these characters in live action anytime. So there was
For
kind
sure.
of
Yeah.
no real distinction there. It's we could have just turned on the cameras and shot these guys doing this. Uh, there's some things in the book that work for a comic book that would work for a cartoon, but that would never really play in live action. One of the things
Mhm.
is Mickey Sullivan, the
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Irish
Yeah.
mobster in the book, who is Mickey Chen in part one. There's a whole sequence where Harvey Dent puts on a Mission Impossible rubber face mask and pretends to be and fools the Irish gang
Yeah.
or the other gangsters into thinking that he's Mickey and gets them to confess or whatever. And and then he like, takes, and it's like, well, yes, I'm totally with you in the comic book, and in a cartoon I could be with you, but
Yeah.
could you really get away with that in live action in a
Mhm.
believable way in a
Yeah.
Batman movie?
Yeah.
It would be tough, it'd be tough.
Yeah.
That's when you call in Clayface or something to do something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a decision point. It was, would
Mhm.
this work if we filmed it? Maybe not. So let's see if we have
Mhm.
another way to do this.
Yeah. Speaking of Harvey, like one of the things that I really enjoy about the Long Halloween novel is all the little points where Jeff Loeb like foreshadows, his accident. Like you mentioned that scene where he's pulling off the mask, and in the book he's got like that line of like, "Oh, I can't believe it would be this hard pretending to be two people," and it's like, I see what you're doing, Loeb.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
like that you kept little bits like that in the movie sprinkled here and there.
yeah, I mean, everybody who knows Long Halloween knows where Harvey's headed,
Mhm.
and so to kind of throw in a few little Easter eggs. One of the things that I'm very happy that people have gotten and appreciated was we made a little change in part one where when the house explodes, Dent's house is blown up by
Mhm.
the gang hired by Falcone. Um, in the book, we see, Gilda is hospitalized. We hospitalized
Yeah.
Harvey, and the geniuses at work in the storyboards and animation really tease and play with the idea of subverting the audience's expectations and people who know where he's headed,
Mhm.
making you think, oh, are we doing that now? Have we moved that up
Yeah.
in the story? Is it happening in a different way? So like, we only see one side of his face for a little bit, um, and people have gotten it, and so I've seen people really appreciate the sort of fun we had with that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, yeah, it's fun, but also it is dark foreshadowing.
Mhm.
It is to play with Harvey's psychology and to sort of look at where where he's going to end up, where the seeds for that are, like you said, like Loeb put in the book, and like we tried to do in the movie, where we can sort of spot those things. They're not just Easter eggs, they're signs, they're road signs.
Mhm.
They're things that are to sort of help tell the story of why uh,
Yeah.
he's headed where he's headed.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Now, actually, before we
it's
actually
it was
started
a
the
lot of fun.
interview,
And oh, by the way, before we say anything else, let me just say, Josh Duhamel just blew me away.
oh yeah.
He's so good. He's so good in this. And not only at Harvey playing, the straight-laced Harvey, district attorney Dent, but then also all the stuff underneath that's bubbling to the surface.
Hmm.
He's just we were very, very fortunate to have someone who handled that.
Yeah, yeah. I thought he was great, and like you said about that live action comparison, like
Right?
I could definitely see him as like Harvey Dent and Two Face
Well,
in
if
a
you
movie.
watch Jupiter's Legacy, there are flashback scenes where
Yeah.
he's
Mhm.
younger and he's wearing a suit
Yeah.
that looks almost identical. He looks like Harvey Dent in the
Yeah.
in Long Halloween movie, and I was just like, I'm that guy. I'm in the meme. I'm like, every time he's on screen in that suit, I'm like,
Yes. Yes. Awesome.
it's really funny.
Yeah. I was gonna say actually, right before, since we're talking about Jeff Loeb and stuff, right before we started the interview, I saw DC release this thing that Tim Sale and Jeff Loeb are doing a Long Halloween special this fall,
I
which
just
is like
retweeted it.
insane. Like, oh, like I'm excited for that to dive
Yeah,
back into that. Like,
yeah. I
I mean,
mean, the
like
whole thing started.
it really is crazy that like 25 years after, this story still has so much reverence and fan base around it. Like,
remember it all started too from their specials, that are collected in the Haunted Night book,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that was kind of what led to the Long Halloween story. And I've been doing stuff over at DC, and I heard about this months ago that they were working on something, and and knowing that the movie's coming out,
Hmm.
and I was just like, oh my gosh, as a fan, I am
Yeah.
so excited. I'm so excited. I can't wait. Nobody lets me see anything, so I don't know anything about what they're doing,
Yeah.
except what we all saw in the news today. So I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait.
Yeah. Now, one of the other projects you've got coming up on Netflix in the 23rd is Masters of the Universe Revelation, which I guess you've worked on with Kevin Smith. So, what was that experience like for you?
I mean, what was that experience like? I'm trying to think of a better way to put it, because I've said this so many times because it's true, which is it was one of the greatest experiences of my career.
Hmm.
It was at once, incredibly fun, but also very challenging. And one of the things that's been so wonderful about working with Kevin is he's a writer, and he just loves writers and
Hmm.
wants to, elevate writers and talk more about writers. And
Yeah.
normally when I work on a project, I work on it and nobody knows that I've worked on it for like 2 years.
Hmm.
But the minute when we were working on the thing, Kevin brought all the writers down to the big He-Man convention down in Anaheim, the PowerCon, and
Yeah. Yeah.
introduced us and brought us up on stage, and so it's the thing that I've actually gotten to talk about, in
Yeah.
interviews and stuff, a little bit, just
Yeah.
because people know. Normally, I can't even confirm my involvement. So anyway, it's wonderful to get to sort of feel like, you are at the party and you're not having to be
Yeah.
quiet about it for 2 years. This show, the people who have brought this show to life are people who love Masters of the Universe so much, and if like our executive, Ted Biaselli, he's such a fan
Hmm.
that he's basically built an entire career,
Yeah.
and now director of original series at Netflix, but simply so that he could get to make this show. His entire life and career have led to this moment.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so I've known Ted for, a long time.
Hmm.
And to get to see him, realize this dream and to get to be a part of it is
Hmm.
just incredible. Rob David for Mattel Television, our executive producer, he's another just huge lifelong fan who has wanted to make this show. And uh, so there's nothing like going to work with people like Ted and Rob and Kevin, who are just so excited to be there and so excited to make the show and do the thing, and and just to get to be invited to that party. It's
Yeah.
kind of the greatest professional experience I've had, you know, um, since it happened after Long Halloween, which was the previous best professional
Yeah.
experience I'd had. So, who knows? Maybe it's all downhill from here.
Hopefully not. um, One of the interesting things about Revelation is that it's a sequel to the original Masters of the Universe cartoon. So, what was in the decision to do it as a sequel instead of like a fresh reboot for audiences? And did you go back and like rewatch any of the original to prep for Revelation?
Yeah, I mean, we I think we kind of say spiritual sequel because it's hard to really say that it can be a sequel to a show that was,
Yeah.
episodic and not serialized,
Hmm.
and what didn't have a real story thread or anything like that. But it is a spiritual sequel in that it is, it's there have been some things that have happened in the canon since then that have sort of been accepted as part of the canon. but I think the idea was to go back and to the classic era, where there are characters who were never depicted, on
Yeah.
screen in the classic era, and now we get a chance to put them on screen, you know, from that era for the first time.
Yeah.
People like King Grayskull and Lieutenant Andra, who's a character who was a sort of obscure that appeared in, I think, in a book or something in the 80s. But so we can kind of get a chance to sort of depict them for the first time, and that's really exciting. So yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I remember when we first found out that we were going to do it, my friend Eric Carrasco, who's a brilliant writer and producer, he came over, and we watched a bunch of episodes of the old show to refresh our memories, and sort of went through the list of sort of what are the top, the highest regarded episodes from the fans, and we had a great time. The thing that surprised us was, not how much of the story works for each episode, for a show that really was frugal, let's say, in terms of how they used animation and reused backgrounds, and but it was incredible how much it works, and how much fun it is. So hopefully, I mean, that was part of the mission statement for us, was let it be fun the way we remember it, but let it also be Shakespearean in that the stakes are real, and they are the kind of stakes we felt when we watched it as kids, where we really thought that Skeletor might win, and also when we played. The other thing is not just the show, but how we felt when we played with the toys when we were kids. I know the stories I told when I played with the toys were much darker than the stories that were happening probably on the show. I was just had a flair for the dramatic, I guess. I probably should have known I was going to be a writer then. And so some of that is, it's exciting to bring to life the stories and make it sort of the way we played with the toys when we were kids. So I hope people enjoy it. I got a chance to help out writing the prequel comics for Dark Horse as well. The first issue just came out, and
that's right.
there's 4 issues that'll come out, and we sort of fill in some backstory and some stuff from before the series begins. And so I've gotten to live with it a little bit over the last couple of years. Wonderful.
Well, was that a bit difficult to to write the series and then go back on this prequel series? How did you guys work that? Did you set like a timeline for yourself?
Not difficult at all. Not difficult at all. It was in that it was Rob, David, and Kevin Smith wrote a document that told the story of these 4 comic book issues, and they said, here you go. Here's everything you need. Here are the tools you need. Let's write the book. And then I scripted it, and we went back and forth with notes, and we've come up with a really fun comic book. Mindy Lee, who's a terrific artist, has brought it to life, and some incredible variant covers are out there on shelves, which I can't believe that Mike Mignola and I think Walt Simonson, my old friend Walt Simonson, is doing a cover.
That's huge.
So I just think there's some huge names doing stuff like that. Really fun stuff. Alex Ross did a full.
I saw that.
Jacket cover that's incredible. So difficult? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We jumped back into the world as if we've lived here all our lives, and hopefully people will enjoy what we're throwing down. The thing about the series and the comic books people have to remember is, Kevin doesn't just get to do whatever he wants, and Netflix doesn't just get to do whatever they want. Mattel is the producer of the show, and Mattel is there as the managing the story for the comic book. I mean, Mattel owns Masters of the Universe, and this is the story that they want to tell, and happily have have brought us in to help tell.
Mhm. Cool. And when you wrote the series, did you have any idea of the casting? Because there are some like big names in this, and like we were just talking about Mark Hamill as the Joker, and here you are writing Mark Hamill as Skeletor. Did you have any inkling of that, like as you were writing, or was that something like you found out after and were like, oh my god, I can't believe Mark Hamill is my Skeletor type thing? Like,
Well, mine. No,
yeah.
I think what I knew when scripting was that we wanted to get Mark Hamill, but I don't think that we knew we were going to be able to get him. I think he really sort of said he was retiring from voice acting,
Mhm.
and happily it was the promise of getting to play Skeletor that brought him back out and into
Mhm.
the recording booth. The one that I can tell you that really struck me was, well, there's two that sort of changed everything. One was when we found out that Griffin Newman would be voicing Orko, um,
Mhm.
and doing it in a way that didn't require any sort of electronic treatment of his voice.
Mhm.
It's his voice, and he just does this incredibly beautiful, plays this incredibly beautiful version of Orko, and that really makes you feel like it's the Orko that you grew up with.
Mhm.
And really just hugely elevated everything. Oh, there's a third one. The other one is Tony Todd as Scareglow, who'd never been depicted before on
Yeah.
screen. Um, and I had worked with Tony Todd on Reign of the Supermen. He played Darkseid. And,
Yes.
obviously
Which
everybody
perfect
knows.
casting there.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect. I mean, everybody knows Tony Todd. I mean, he's
Yeah.
incredible. And I just couldn't, I was like, well, that's just a slam. I didn't have anything to do with it. I didn't have anything to do with any of the cast. But that was a
Yeah.
slam dunk.
Yeah.
Um, when they told me Chris Wood would be stepping into the boots as He-Man, I was like, I can't imagine anybody. All of us, I couldn't imagine who would play He-Man, and then they said
Mhm.
Chris Wood, and now I can't imagine anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's terrific.
Yeah.
And then finally, the big one was Eva Lynn, Lena Headey. I found out while I was scripting a story with Eva Lynn that she had agreed to play the role. And I
Mhm.
immediately ran to my computer and started rewriting all of her dialogue because I know what she can do. I don't know her personally, but I've watched her for years and I'm such a fan.
Yeah.
And when we talk about Shakespearean and how how the language works, I know what she can do and what she
Yeah. Yeah.
not
Like
only
she's
what she
very
can handle.
versatile. Like Game of Thrones and Dread, and she's got
She
the gunpowder milkshake coming up. Like,
she can make something that is on the page, maybe the stuff I love to write, which is a little bit more dense and Shakespearean sometimes. She can make that sound so conversational and real and
yeah.
full of feeling. And only I think the best actors do that. And I
Mhm.
knew she could, and boy does she. So I was like, okay, I'm taking the training wheels off. I'm taking the brakes off this thing, and we're gonna give her some stuff to do.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be happier with how she brought evil into life.
Nice. Um, Now you've worked on Superman, Batman, Masters of the Universe, and Transformers. But
That
those
was
are
the
some
last 2 years.
yeah, those are some pretty big franchises. Do you ever do you ever kind of sit back and like it kind of hits you like, oh man, like I've worked on these huge franchises, like these huge things of pop culture. Like,
Yeah, let me tell you, one of the hard things is when it's your job, sometimes you forget. Sometimes you're just caught up in your work day and I forget how fortunate I am to get to play with the toys I get to play with and to get to play in the sandbox that I get to play in. And you know, like I'm writing comics. You know, they told me you know, they said we want to do this book, this Teen Titans Academy. What do you want to do? And they said you can have all the original new Teen Titans characters from Marv
Mhm.
Wolfman and George Perez. I said, are you kidding me? Okay. And then I said, wait, can I create some new kids to put, you know, at the academy? And they said, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I said, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So it's sometimes, you know, I'm just busy. I got deadlines. I'm doing the thing, and I have to stop and think, you know, how lucky am I to get to be able to drive this car at this particular moment? You
Mhm.
know, I've talked about this before. Reign of the Superman. Those were the first Superman comic books I ever
Mm.
purchased, and then I got to adapt that for the screen. The you know, Long Halloween is something I've been a fan of for so long, and I can't believe I got to work on that. So yeah, Masters of the Universe. I mean, and maybe one of the biggest. I mean, I was a. You can see behind me here. I, I was a
Yeah.
Transformers kid.
Yeah.
Transformers
I've kind of been eyeing the Unicron behind you.
Transformers is
Looks pretty
absolutely
cool.
my number one as a kid, and
Yeah.
especially, you know, Transformers the movie really elevated everything, as far as
Mhm.
the animated movie, as far as I'm concerned, and I think really planted the seeds for me to have a career as a storyteller, and particularly in animation, and with big, you know, hero IP, genre IP, and so I got to getting to work on Transformers War for Cybertron trilogy, for Netflix, uh, and Hasbro. That one is the one that I still have to pinch myself, you know, excuse me, pinch myself over, because it was, I knew that one day working in animation, I'd
Mhm.
get a chance to write Transformers someday, you
Yeah.
know, maybe some version of, but it probably wouldn't be G1. It probably wouldn't be the
Yeah.
Transformers that I grew up with. It would be, you know, there'd be a compromise in terms of how, you know.
Mhm.
And then I go in to meet with FJ DeSanto, the showrunner,
Mhm.
who I became, you know, instant friends with, because he's fantastic and a great guy. And he pitched me what they wanted to do, and it was so heavily rooted in G1, and, you know, not just the, you know, and, you know, the toys that were coming out, and everything was just G1, and not only just inspired, but, and not really even G1 adjacent, but possibly even actual G1. I mean, there was a
Mhm.
little bit of interpretation as to how to look at it. Um, and I thought, oh, just to get to work on this version of Transformers is a lifelong dream come true.
Mhm.
So that has, you know, all of them are, you know, I feel very lucky. That one in particular, I can't believe that I got to do to work on the version that I got to work on.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. One of the interesting things I find about the Transformers franchise is that like the different versions of it, like G1, and then like a lot of the like the later series or games or live action film comics, all that, like they're very versatile in how they're able to kind of like bounce between being kind of like cheesy, but then also like serious. Is it like there's a lot of like typical like cheesy 80s stuff in the original G1 series, but then you get to other series like Transformers Prime
Right.
or you know or the War for Cybertron, both the video games and this series, and like they're very dark and like more serious. So like it's why do you think the franchise is able to like do that bounce back between like some more kid friendly stories and then the more like grounded serious ones?
You know, and you know, we'll talk about Transformers, but it's also true of Masters of the Universe. I mean, you look at, you
Mhm.
know, the classic era, and you see a lot of, you know, there's a lot of fun being had,
Yeah.
and now Netflix is not only doing the Revelation series that I've worked on, but also Mattel is and Netflix are doing a show called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe that is more of a kid focused
Yeah.
show, and so they're kind of, you know, doing them at the same time, and you know, I think that just, I mean, it just speaks to the the versatility, not only of the brand itself, but also what it tells you. I think the big takeaway for me is, it's about the longevity of it. It's,
Hmm.
there are guys like us who maybe grew up with these things, and as we get a little more serious, as we grow up and we see the world a little bit differently, we can see something like Transformers through a different lens and see that, how is this a story about us? How is it about people? And what is, how do we translate that and make that story a story that's interesting for us
Hmm.
as adults to watch now? It's hard to go back and watch the old classic cartoons that we grew up with. They don't really hold up. We always say they don't hold up. It's not that they don't hold up, it's
Yeah.
that they don't hold up for us anymore because we've changed. They
Hmm.
haven't changed. They were great then, they're great now, but we've changed. And so we view them differently. So what I deal in is nostalgia, I feel like. So I
Hmm.
try to come in and make a version of the thing that make it feel the way you felt when you watched it as a kid or when you played with the toys. And so for Transformers in particular, you know, I think that it just speaks to the versatility and the longevity of it, that we can make a
Hmm.
show now that can appeal to guys my age on one level, and then we can watch it with our kids who can enjoy it on a whole other level,
Hmm.
as they discover Transformers for the first time.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that you have to have the right people at the helm when you're crafting the event or the story. That
Hmm.
was why it was such a joy working with FJ DeSanto and Matt Murray and everyone at Hasbro and Netflix on War for Cybertron. I mean, I think you don't have to explain any of that to these guys. They
Hmm.
get it because they grew up with it. They love it. They've got kids that they want to introduce to the thing. And so
Yeah.
we're all making the same movie, which is the thing that you want in this business. If everybody's wanting to make the same thing, then, chances are it'll get made, and hopefully there'll be fans who will respond to it and like it. Um, and that's, FJ has a sense of fun and adventure, and that he, was sort of undeniable going through this process,
Hmm.
and he really helped elevate that and bring that out in me and Gavin Hignite and May Cat as we scripted the episodes for season 2 and 3, or part 2 and part 3 of the trilogy, Earthrise and Kingdom. um, when you have that kind of leadership who gets uh, how far you can go with something like Transformers, how serious you can be, but also how much fun you can have,
Hmm.
and who allows you to play with those lines and blur those lines. There's nothing greater
Hmm.
as a writer.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um, so you came on with Earthrise, which is the second chapter of this trilogy, and
I know I was working on Man of Tomorrow when they were working on part 1,
yeah,
Siege. So I didn't get a chance to work on Siege, but I finished my work on Man of Tomorrow on a Friday,
yeah,
and then I got to begin on Transformers on Monday.
nice. That's cool.
It was great.
It's funny, like just working on like the Man of Steel, and then you're working on like beings of
Steel
actual
Man.
steel.
Steel Man.
Yeah,
Exactly.
oh, that's hilarious. um, Yeah, so Earthrise, it's different from Siege because it's like half the story still takes place on Cybertron, but then the other half is following like this large exodus of characters. Um, so how did you balance like the events going on Cybertron to like what was going on in space as Optimus Prime and
You know,
Megatron like went on their journeys and clashed up there?
FJ's idea for that story, which he had a very well formed, fully thought out idea for Earthrise, was, this is the Star Trek season, and and
Oh,
and
yeah,
let's
yeah.
let's explore the universe and look at it through that lens. And
Mhm.
I think it was, we knew that, Megatron is on Cybertron, and we knew we were going to be checking in, and there would be things happening on Cybertron. But I don't know that I don't know this, but I'd have to ask him again. But I kind of remember that it wasn't in the plan that we would spend as much time with Cybertron as we ended
Mhm.
up doing. I think Gavin Hignite and I, as we sat down and really got into what the meat of the story would be for Earthrise and how it would play out, not only did Megatron's story become, you know, a main focus, but also we discovered very quickly that Elita One's story
Mhm.
was very, very interesting and would would allow us to explore something that we didn't really get to have a, get to see explored in previous incarnations of the
Mhm.
franchise. And it's just sort of irresistible at that point when you start getting to play with those particular toys, and it's like, oh, what is this? I think we both, Gavin and I, in episodes 1 and 2, we both wrote scenes with I think we both wrote scenes with Alita and Megatron, and
Mhm.
we just, because we just desperately wanted to see what that dialogue was. How did that play
Yeah.
out? And so, we just we would have, I think, if left to our own devices, we would have just written an entire season of just Elita One and Megatron having a conversation in a room. And
Yeah.
thank goodness FJ and Matt were there to remind us to keep the story moving.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of to your point there of having Lita and like all the different incarnations, because like there have been so many Transformer shows and continuities throughout the past like 30 plus years, 35 plus years. And one of the things I like about the trilogy is that like it picks certain things. Like you see a little bit of G1 here, you see a little bit of live action here and stuff. And then of course it's also got like such a huge roster of characters. How did you choose like which pieces of like Transformers lore and which Autobots and Decepticons to focus on?
I'll tell you, some of that was determined, as I recall, by what Hasbro was doing with the toys. And I don't mean that it
Mhm.
was to sell toys. What I
Yeah.
mean is, in order to create, as I recall, and I'm not the expert on this, you'd have to ask FJ, but in order to create the 3D models for the characters, I
Mhm.
believe they used the actual toys and the prototypes for
Yeah,
the toys.
I think you're right. I think I read that too. Yeah.
And so they would scan them and use those to create the
Mhm.
3D models. And I think that that knowing what we had available to us, because of what was happening with the toys and what we
Mhm.
could then do, what Polygon could do in the animation, it helped us sort of focus on, well, what is this, what is this going to look like? Who, maybe since we have these characters, what is their story and how does that play out? And uh, but it wasn't like in the front of our mind. It was,
Mhm.
we were told these are the toys you get to play with, and so we knew what to do from that.
Mhm.
And like I said, FJ knew what the story was. He knew, you know, very much where we were headed, and how we would get there. It was just a matter of scripting it so that we could have some fun along the way, and add in a whole bunch of Transformers the movie Easter eggs, like I tried to do.
Yeah.
Um, and so some of it was that. So one of the interesting things was sometimes we didn't have the ability, because of the expense and what goes into creating those models. Sometimes, there's characters who we didn't have an alt mode for,
Mhm.
so we only saw them as robots, or we never. There were 3 models that you needed. You needed the alt mode, the robot, and you needed the mid transformation mode, I guess.
Mhm.
And sometimes we didn't have a mid transformation mode for a character, so you would see them in robot form, and then you might see them in vehicle form or something, but you
Yeah.
never see them do the thing,
Yeah.
convert. And it can be frustrating because I'm writing in the script, I'm like, and then they all transform, and I'd get a
Yeah.
note back and say, yeah, keep in mind that these 3 characters we won't see transform, so they're going to have to, and so that can be frustrating because it's like, but it's Transformers.
Yeah.
Um, but you have to. This is just the nature of the business. You have a budget. You know, you only get to do as much as you can do. And I think for the show to look as beautiful as it looks, and to for the story to be as expansive as it is, I mean, the scale and the backgrounds, and it's breathtakingly beautiful when you look at it. In order for that to work, you have to compromise in some places.
Yeah.
And what we try to do as the writers is to make that feel seamless. And it's sort of like what I was saying about a comic book. Sometimes you're filling in when these brands and these characters. You can fill in the blanks between the panels, between the pages, or between conversions with
Yeah.
Transformers. So hopefully that's the way it's received. Kingdom, Kingdom is a May Cat came in because Gavin Hignite moved on to do some other stuff, and so but we were very lucky to get May Cat, because May grew up the way I grew up on G1. May Cat grew up on Beast Wars, and was a
Beast
wonderful
Wars
voice.
was huge for me.
Yeah, just a great voice to have in the room, who just kind of knows everything about Beast Wars and G1, really, but to have such a love for Beast Wars and to know it as inside and out as May does, made the whole process a lot more satisfying. Hopefully for the fans it will be as well. But that one was, I think the FJ had less of the story for Kingdom than he had for Siege and Earthrise. I think we got to play a little bit more with crafting that story than maybe we did on Earthrise. And sometimes you go down a bad road. I remember, I think it was episode 4. Man, I did a lot of rewrites on episode 4 because I couldn't quite crack it. And FJ and Matt, they had such great notes, and they kept coming back with ideas and how we could make things work. And they really saved that episode for me, where it was sometimes it's just a tough nut to crack, especially when you only are doing 6 episodes. 6 episodes is not a lot of time to do the kind of big world storytelling that we maybe want to do. But again, you have to make compromises if you want it to look and feel this good. And that's the number of episodes we got, so we had to do what we could with what we I think we did a pretty good job.
I viewed the 6 episodes as like you sit and watch them like all throughout, and it feels like a 2.5 hour movie. And
sorry, did I miss this? Have you seen Kingdom yet?
Not yet, no.
Oh, okay. Right. So I think a couple of people have already they're going out now. I think some press are getting them to see them early.
Yeah, I think I'll be getting it soon, but I haven't seen it yet. Yeah, I've just seen the couple of trailers, which look awesome. So yeah, on that note about Kingdom, like it is coming out at the end of the month, and
July 29th drops on Netflix.
Yeah. And it's going to conclude the trilogy. And I talked about like the large cast that you have, and you're expanding it even more with all the Beast Wars characters, which apart from like the comics and I think a little couple Easter eggs here and there, and like some of the other series like animated or Prime, these characters have never actually met on screen before. I don't think, like Beast Wars and well, technically in the original series.
There's that one moment in the original. Boy, we really looked at that, and I think everyone should watch that episode again. And we knew. I think that was a big inspiration for us, for May and I, and because what was so important to us was we didn't want to totally rewrite the canon. We thought, is there a way that we can do this in a way that it doesn't negate anything that's happened before? How can we do this in a way that it can sort of fit into everything we already know and love? And I think that's the best way to come at these things. That's how we came at Long Halloween. That's how we came at Masters of the Universe. I mean, I think that when you're working with nostalgia and nostalgic properties and things that have a lot of attachment and weight for a lot of fans, I think that's the best approach. How can we do this in a careful way that we don't upend, we don't just come in and reboot and say that never happened, this is the way it happened, you know. So there was a lot of inspiration from the classic stuff that we took, and hopefully people will get it and appreciate sort of where we're coming from.
Yeah.
I can say that without spoiling anything.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I really liked about Siege and Earthrise, you know, we were talking about Megatron, and Megatron is one of my favorite villains, like of anything.
Which one?
Yeah, there's so many Megatrons.
It got very complicated in the scripting early on when we're like, Megatron says to Megatron, you know.
Yeah.
I think in the script I started calling the Beast Force Megatron. I called him BW Megatron in the script.
Yeah. Yeah, no, G1 Megatron is one of my favorites. Beast Force Megatron is cool too, but G1 is like right up there for me. So one of the things that I liked about Siege and Earthrise with him is that, like, he's the villain, but he's not like fully outright evil yet. He takes, like, you know, little steps here and there, and Earthrise he gets even more evil.
This is what I mean. This is what I mean about sort of our sensibilities change as we grow.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, he doesn't, I don't think Megatron needs to be a mustache twirling villain. You know, I think that there is a political difference between what Megatron believes and wants to do and what Optimus Prime believes. And to get to look at that in a thoughtful way, in a serious way. And, you know, that's what led to that. I mean, it's not that Megatron is, everyone is a hero everyone's the hero of their own story, right? And so to come at Megatron from the perspective of, well, he, you know, if he thinks he's the hero, what does that feel like? What does that look like? And how do we get the viewer to feel, well, maybe he is, you know, because you have to ask the question. You have to. Otherwise, it's doing him a disservice as a character. So so that was what that was all about, and it ended up creating such a great opportunity for this richness of character to really take a deeper dive and look at Megatron and his motivations and who he is and where he comes from. You know, I think there's great tragedy in his story, great tragedy, and so we tried to mine that.
Yeah, I like the moment in Earthrise where I think it was episode 2 or 3, I can't remember. But like he's all about, you know, making sure Cybertron survives and everything, even like by, you know, the darkest of means of using his own troops as like batteries. But then, like, the moment he hears Optimus Prime is alive and in space, he's like, I'm out of here. I'm tracking Prime down, because he's so hell bent on revenge there. In that moment.
Well, and tempered by the fact that Prime is, you know, going after the Allspark, and Megatron knows that the Allspark could solve a lot of problems for him, and you know, that's, you know, it's a revenge story. It's Wrath of Khan, and you know, it's but it's also which again, it's the Star Trek season, remember. But there is also still, remember, even Khan's motivations for revenge were based on a terrible tragedy that he felt Kirk inflicted upon him and he saw Kirk as this evil entity who'd done something terrible to him. And we could understand that. It made it more interesting and complex. And I think that's where Megatron's motivations in Earthrise, you know, we're sort of where they live. You know, yeah, he wants revenge, but he also needs the Allspark. And if Prime is on the trail, you know, that could be the way to go.
Yeah, with Kingdom coming out so soon, is there anything you can kind of tease, or like what can fans of both G1 Transformers and of Beast Wars, what can they expect?
The unexpected. I think you know, this is the end of the trilogy, and we not only had the the gift of being able to, you know, write this kingdom story and you know, collide a couple of worlds here, at least a couple. We also, you know, had the real joy of landing the trilogy plane, and I think that the excitement, the stakes are higher than ever. They will build higher with every episode, and in the end, you know, those stakes are going to matter, and I hope that people appreciate the thoughtful care with which we tried to land the ship, um, uh, in a way that is meant to be to honor not just the Kingdom season, but the War for Cybertron trilogy and G1 and Beast Wars, and really in the end the entire franchise. We came at this with absolute love, and I hope that that shows, especially once you get to the finale.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much, Tim, for speaking with me. Great conversation. Looking forward to Batman, Masters of the Universe, and Transformers. That's a lot. Yeah,
It's absurd. Masters of the
Yeah.
Universe comes out on July 23rd. Long Halloween Part 2, July 27th. Transformers War for Cybertron Kingdom on July 29th. So that's going to be a weird week, and I apologize in advance to everybody on Twitter for the amount of stuff that I'm going to be posting about. I'm really sorry. It just worked out this way. It's weird.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, yeah, again, thank you very much, and for sitting down with me.
Thanks, Ricky. It's always a pleasure. Thank you.